Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 14th of January of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about Ukraine attack deep inside of the territory of Russia. According to the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation, last night between the 30th and the 14th of January of 2025, the armed force of Ukraine launched a missile strike at objects in Bryansk region by 6 US-made ATACMS operational tactical missiles, 6 UK-made Storm Shadow air-based cruise missiles, and Ukrainians were using up to 31 drones. All those units, all those missiles and drones were brought down by the Russians as a result of air defense work, and there were lots of explosions in small settlement by the name of Bryansk. So the Ukrainians, according to information we have, were trying to destroy and to damage this chemical plant, Bryansk chemical plant, and Bryansk warehouse for this chemical plant. But once again, the Russians managed to destroy everything, and the parts of those attacks, missiles and Storm Shadow missiles fell on the territory of the city, and there were lots of explosions. Now let's discuss the purposes and why the Ukrainians were attacking this chemical plant. According to information we have, the Russians are using this chemical plant, and they produce some components for fuel for Russian missiles and for Russian drones and for Russian planes. So by that attack, the Ukrainians just were trying to destroy some maybe chemical plants and Russian capacities to produce this component and reduce Russian possibilities to attack deep inside of the territory of Ukraine. Furthermore, according to information we have, during the previous night, the Ukrainians attacked the city of Saratov and the city of Engels. And from these settlements, we also received lots of videos of a fire. Some sources are saying that this video is old, and this is the consequences of another Ukrainian missile attack or drone attack in the territory of Engels. In this video, we can see how another fuel depot of Russian Federation was set on fire. Furthermore, as a result of drone attack in the city of Saratov, we have another video with fire. And this video we can see how the Ukrainians managed to damage Russian, fuel oil refinery plant. And the Russians are using both cities, Saratov and Engels, also in deep inside of Ukraine missile strike purposes. So there is a military airfield in the city of Engels, and the Russians are using their strategical aviations like Tu-22 and Tu-160 to attack deep inside of Ukraine. Both explosions on both cities, of course, will reduce Russian possibilities to attack Ukraine with cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and different missiles in the very near future. Furthermore, according to information we have, during the previous night, the Ukrainians attacked the city of Kazan. We also received a lot of videos of fires on some industrial zones, in some places, in some oil refineries, and many other, constructions and facilities that the Russians are using for their military purposes. As for the city of Kazan, this is basically the heart of drone production in Russian Federation. So most likely the Ukrainians were trying to destroy the warehouses with Geraint drones, also with the same purposes, not to allow the Russians to attack Ukraine in the very near future. Why is this so important? I'll remind you that the last time when the Russians carried out massive missile strike all over the entire territory of Ukraine took place probably on the 24th or on the 25th of December during the Christmas. And during that attack, the Russians were attacking Ukrainian energy facilities, heat facilities, and many other important social objects that Ukrainians are using to support lives of simple and regular people. And that attack basically took place 21 days ago. So most likely during this period of time, the Russians managed to accumulate additional missiles, and the Russians were planning to attack Ukraine in the very near future, most likely before the Trump's inauguration. So maybe Ukrainians, by all those attacks that took place during the previous night, managed to break the situation and not to allow the Russians to attack Ukraine before the Trump's inauguration. Anyway, let's wait wait and see. But as for the current situation, according to information we have, the Russian armed forces deployed 4 missiles carriers to the Black Sea with a total salvo of 28 caliber missiles. Most likely the Russians will attack Ukraine maybe this upcoming night between the 14th and the 15th of January. So let's wait and see what is going to be next. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first we're going to talk about the Sumy region. Today we got a lot of videos from the area of Sumy. The Russian sources reported that as a result of several Iskander strikes, they managed to destroy completely the base and the temporary deployment point of the 78th Air Assault Regiment. Later the Russians published us the video. In this video we can see how the Russian reconnaissance drone was flying above this area, searching for Ukrainian camps, for Ukrainian bases, and when another base was discovered, the Russians began bombing and attacking this territory. Once again, the Russians are saying that as a result of this attack, they managed to destroy the temporary deployment point of the 78th Separate Assault Regiment. And most likely, the Ukrainians were planning to use the 78th Regiment in the Sumy direction with the purpose to counterattack Russian positions and to restore control over the lost territories during the Russian last counteroffensive operation. This is very important because now the weather in the Sumy direction in the entire Ukraine is not so good. It's like sometimes plus, sometimes minus by Celsius. The weather is bad, the quality of surface is very poor. The Russians, both the Russians and the Ukrainians, can't use the surface, the land, the fields, the road to attack each other because basically vehicles can't do anything in this with this weather. So everybody, both the Russians and the Ukrainians, are waiting for better weather, and according to information we have, during the next several days the weather will go below 0 by -20 by Celsius, and then the surface will be freezed enough to begin offensive or counter-offensive operation both by the Russian side and the Ukrainian side. And this destruction of the 78th Regiment most likely tell us that Ukrainians will not be able to counterattack, but the Russians will do this. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the northern Kupiansk direction. According to information we have, the Russians during the previous 24 hours managed to cross the river of Oskol in few more places. The sources are saying that the Russians continue improving their foothold on the Ukrainian side of the river of Oskol. As for now, we don't have any changes on the ground, but we expect that during the next 48 hours we're going to receive significant changes in this area. Now let's move further. As for the central Kupiansk direction, the Russians continue their offensive operation in the direction of the village of Zeleny High. The weather doesn't allow the Russians to begin full-scale offensive operations on the ground. They're waiting. The same story, -20 by Celsius. As for now, the Russians are bombing and attacking the settlement of Zeleny High with FABs, with artillery systems, so basically preparing the foothold before further offensive operation. As for the southern Kupiansk direction or the Liman direction, today the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes, the settlement of Tyranny was captured and secured by the Russians completely. Based on this report, we have adjusted the map in Russian favor. We just colored the most southern part of the settlement of Tyranny in Russian favor. If this information is correct, then most likely currently the clashes are already taking place on the territory of Yampolovka or in the northern part. So we see that the battle for the southern Kupiansk is coming to the end, and most likely during the next 2 months the third battle for Liman is going to start. As for the Sivas direction, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received anything special. The Russians continued bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions in the fields. The Russians were destroying Ukrainian artillery forces, FPV drone operator positions, machine gun positions, so just the regular military activities without something special. As for the city of Chasiv Yar, there are very heavy clashes. The Ukrainians continue bringing more and more forces in the direction of the city with the purpose not even to stabilize the situation, but maybe to win additional day or two, or maybe to unblock forces that were blocked by the Russians in the central part or in the micro district of Novy. The Russians see everything, of course, and when they see another group of Ukrainian forces, they begin attacking and bombing them with multiple launch rocket systems, with just regular FPV drones. Now the main actions are taking place in the central part. Today, according to information we have, the Russians managed to secure the industrial zone, and now the clashes are taking place in the residential area. As for the city of Terez, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received even a single report from the city itself, but we start receiving a lot of updates to the north of the city of Terez, which means that the Russians managed to bring artillery systems as close as possible, maybe on the territory of the city of Terezk. The Russians moved their focus further in the northern direction, and now everything is ready to begin offensive operation in the direction of Konstantinovka itself. The Russians are finishing regrouping in the Terezk direction, and very soon they will be able to start the greatest offensive operation in the direction of Konstantinovka from the south. As for the Pokrovsk direction, during the previous 24 hours we got a lot of very interesting updates. First of all, the Russians managed to take under control the village of Zelena. This information was provided us by pro-Ukrainian sources. Maybe tomorrow the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation will confirm this information. Furthermore, the Russian soldiers managed to enter the village of Zhirova. At least this information can be confirmed by the video that was published by the Ukrainian side. In this video we can see how the Ukrainian drone was flying above the Russian assault troopers that were moving through this forest, through these tree lines in the direction of the residential part of Zhirova. Based on this video, we have made small adjustments to map. The most important updates are coming from the area of Udachne. The Russians continue advancing in the direction of the settlement, and during the previous 24 hours the Russians indeed managed to cut physically the road and the railways between the settlement of Udachne and the settlement of Kotlina, and now we start receiving first geolocations from the outskirts of Kotlina. Most likely the village of Kotlina is going to be the first and the primary target for the Russians. First they will try to take this village. This will allow the Russians to secure their eastern flank, and when the eastern flank is secured, the Russians will be able to begin advancing in the direction of Udachne. Obviously, these two villages, Udachne and Kotlina, these two villages is the primary target for the armed force of Russian Federation for the next 2 or 3 weeks. After the fall of these two villages, the Russians will think what to do next. Now let's move further. Today, according to Ukrainian video published by the Ukrainian site, we have adjusted the map in the area of the settlement of Nova Elizavetovka. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map in Russian favor. The village was captured by the Russians. Furthermore, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to take several more buildings on the territory of the village by the name of Yaseneva. This information was provided by pro-Ukrainian sources. Now let's discuss the situation in the Kurakhove direction. After the fall of the settlement of Slavyanka and Petropavlovka, the Russians began advancing further in the western direction, and now the Russians are trying to outflank the Ukrainians in the settlement of Andriivka from the north and the northeast. This information was provided us by pro-Ukrainian sources. On the other side, the Russians are advancing in the direction of the same village, but now from the eastern and the southeastern direction. So as you can see, there are two roads of attacks. Soon, Andriivka, most likely, the main clashes for Andriivka is going to start somewhere at the beginning of February, and the Russians will try to take this territory under complete control probably by the end of February, and by the end of the February, we're going to understand the future and the next situation for the Andriivka fortified area. But meanwhile, the Russians are attacking the Andriivka fortified area, the Ukrainians still hold their positions on the territory of Dachne, despite the fact that the Russians are bombing and attacking this territory every day, non-stop, 24 hours, 7 days a week. The Ukrainians still hold their positions, and the Russians still haven't managed to answer the village itself. Now let's discuss the situation in the Velika Novoselovka direction. Today we got lots of videos. The most important is coming from the settlement of New Skuchne. The Russians managed to raise the flag in the most northern part of the settlement. In this video we can see how the Russian soldier was establishing the Russian flag in the most northern part of the settlement of New Skuchne. This is 100% proof that the settlement was secured and captured by the Russians during the previous days, and based on this video we have adjusted the map. Furthermore, in the northeastern direction we received video how the Russians were bombing and attacking this part of Velika Novoselovka. Novosilovka. Maybe this is something like artillery preparation. The Russians were bombing some certain blocks, some certain micro district of the Velika Novosilovka. Maybe during the next 2 days, maybe this upcoming night between the 14th and the 15th of January, the Russians will make their first attempt to attack the northeastern part with the purpose to gain a foothold on the territory of the settlement itself, and this is going to be obviously a media victory. Another video published from the same site of Velika Novosilovka. In this video we can see how the Ukrainians most likely were trying to evacuate wounded soldiers, and the vehicle that came to this part of Velika Novosilovka was immediately discovered by the Russians and destroyed by FPV drones. So as you can see, no chances for Ukrainians to do anything. Indeed, we expect that before the Trump's inauguration, the Russians will try to enter at least the settlement from one of the directions. Most likely this is going to be northeastern, because there are lots of farms, lots of barracks. It's a perfect position for the Russians to concentrate forces before the final stage of the battle for the settlement itself. As for the Zaporozhye direction, we haven't been receiving any updates, anything from this area for a very long period of time, and during the previous 24 hours we got, as you can see, at least 3 geolocations. The Russians were bombing and attacking the Ukrainian positions with artillery forces, with FAPs, with stealth flamethrower systems. It's all this activity of the armed force of Russian Federation reminds me something like preparation before another wave of attack with the purpose to improve the Russians' positions along the line of combat contact. So we expect that maybe during the next several days the Russians will get a little bit closer to Novodanilovka and Mala-Takmachka, and they will try to take several more tree lines and to get a little bit closer to the city of Orekhov. As for the western Zaporozhye direction, nothing special. As for the Kherson direction, the Russians continue hunting and attacking the Ukrainian positions along the Ukrainian side of the river of Dnipro, just regular activities without something special. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.